Welcome to the Mindful Muscle Podcast. My name is Paul Klingon, and I am your host. I left a career at Amazon in 2018 to help people live healthier lives. Mindful Muscle is the balance between pushing harder to hit your fitness goals while also being able to slow down. We'll talk all things training, nutrition, and recovery, while also highlighting the importance of mindfulness, slowing down, and taking care of mental health and performance. You'll hear from doctors, authors, athletes, coaches, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders in the health and wellness space. And you'll hear from me as an athlete, trainer, nutrition, and personal performance coach as I share my thoughts and experiences that are helping my clients and myself get better each and every day. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Mindful Muscle Podcast. We got Jenn Wall here. Jenn, thank you so much for taking the time on this lovely Friday, end of January. And I'm excited to sit down and have a good conversation with you.
Yes, excited to be here. Thank you so much. And my thing is, I just got to say it. Thank GOAT, it's Friday. I'm obsessed with goats. If you guys follow me on social media, you'll see like every morning is a goat morning. So Friday is Thank GOAT, it's Friday. But yes, it's a great Friday. So thank you for having me.
That's so funny. Where did that come from?
Honestly, I have like an obsession with goats. I've got like goat mugs, like goat thermos, like goat socks. Like I used to have goats as a kid. They're just like the cutest little animals to me. So I one time just like posted a goat morning and people love it. And I just kept posting it on my Instagram stories and now it's just a thing. So yeah.
Is this like a pun wide fascination or like goat specifically? Are you like the pun master? Okay.
Yeah. And then Saturdays are for the cat. So it's catter day. Sundays or whatever animal I pick. And then I try to put a pun in there. So
That's
yeah.
funny. If you see me like waving my hand, anyone listening, you can't see me waving my hand, but my cats sat on my podcast equipment when I wasn't looking. So I'm like, gosh, dang it, Leia. Like, you freaking, I love you, but you little fluffy girl. So anyway, super excited to have you on and really dive into one, how you help your clients. But I think what would be really helpful is to get a little bit of an understanding of your background. Bachelor's in nutrition, CEO of Jenn Wall Fitness. But what got you started kind of going down that path initially?
Yeah, great question. So what got me started was honestly my family growing up. I come from my immediate family, so my brothers and sisters. I have 7 brothers and sisters. That makes 8 kids in my family. And then my mom has she had 9 total kids in her family, so she was the youngest of 9. And my father, he was actually a bit older than my mom, and he was the second youngest of 4. So something that like really impacted me, 2 big things. I grew up super poor in like Appalachian, Ohio. So a very poor area. So I really didn't have a lot in terms of like money and like things. And so at the end of the day, I kind of realized that like my health and my body was like something that I could take care of. And then it's something that I always had no matter what. And then number 2 is my mom came from a big family, but I lost my uncle before I was even born. And then like a lot of family members passed away due to health problems that were completely preventable. And then my grandfather had his foot amputated as well too from like diabetes. Like I just saw how poor health like affected people. And then also my father's side, I lost 2 uncles before I was born as well too. I lost both of my grandparents on his side as well, like when I was super young. So I just didn't want to have to be like that older sibling, being the second oldest of 8 kids and not being able to take care of myself, and my brothers and my sisters having to lose me due to like not taking care of my health and my fitness. So that was like kind of like the big driver of like, hey, we got to take care of ourselves. So when I went to college, I was pre-med, and then I switched to nursing. And then in nursing, I took a nutrition class and I was like, this totally makes sense. Like lifestyle and exercise and nutrition are all what keep us healthy. So I would rather help somebody like prevent disease than to have to treat it later, if that makes sense. So that's how I kind of got into nutrition and my bachelor's in nutrition.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Did your siblings have a lot of the same concerns or thoughts as you, or were you kind of the one that made that decision? I'm sure there's kind of like a split and people have their own journeys, but what specifically made you be like, I don't want this at all?
Yeah, I was just like super conscientious of like, I'm the second oldest and I like helped kind of raise my younger siblings. There's like between me and the youngest, there's 15 years between us. So it was just like I wanted to be able to be there in case they needed me. So it was just more me just being conscientious about like my quality of living and also wanting to set a good example for them. And whenever I got into health and fitness, I actually had my sister who is just younger than me get into health and fitness as well too. And then my sister just older than me too. So I have definitely been setting that example for them, but it was mostly about like being conscientious and being there for them and setting that good example.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I'm super interested to dive into for you specifically, you mentioned like money and things and health and being able to still take care of that, even though money wasn't abundant or it was maybe harder to do that. And that's a big objection that you'll get from a lot of people is it's hard to eat healthy with, little means. How did you go about that? And what would you say to people that use that as an objection right now, or maybe they're finding it hard to, even though they're trying?
Yeah, that's something that, when I was in school, I was a bachelor's in nutrition, like that was my major, nutrition was, but I was a business minor and I didn't actually learn about, we didn't learn about food deserts. That's what it's called, food deserts. In like our nutrition classes, we learned about that actually. I learned about that in my financial literacy class where there's like food deserts. So I definitely kind of lived in like, kind of like the place where there would be a food desert, like not as much like fresh food. Or maybe you can think of people in inner cities that live in food deserts where they have access to like convenience stores and things like that. It's super cheap, which means it's like low quality in terms of nutrition. Fortunately for my family, I think that, just that we had a big family, we couldn't buy a lot of food that was like stuff that we could easily go through. So my family did buy like a lot of canned vegetables, canned fruit, like lean meats, like maybe not the leanest, but they were pretty good about like not buying just a bunch of junk food because they knew it would be wasted and gone through really fast. So I think that was helpful when I was younger. But when I got older and like into college and I was taking care of myself at that point too, just because I had that focus on nutrition, I just kind of went through and made sure that I bought things that were just like within my college budget. Again, more of those canned items, things that were like easy to like put into the pantry and not worry about like spoiling. Frozen fruits and vegetables, that was super helpful. But I don't think that you need to necessarily buy any of these like marketed like healthy foods in order to be healthy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And that's a really good point. I grew up with three siblings, and so it wasn't as big as your family, but it's definitely true when like that fast, good junk food is in the pantry, it's got maybe 10 seconds before it's gone. And it's like this free for all. But the healthier beans or whatever the boring stuff they have to prepare that's in bulk from Costco would sit there and we're just like, I don't want to do that. That's not a ding dong. I want a ding dong.
Exactly. Like the beans and cornbread, we had a ton of that when I was a kid, like beans and cornbread, but nobody wanted to eat the beans and cornbread for sure, right? So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get your degree and you've got this education now. At what point did you go and decide, all right, I want to turn this into something as more of a career or really start working with people and helping them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's like, yeah, that's the big thing. So in school, at the end of my time there, I started researching in a lab with a professor, and we were looking for a new therapeutic drug for diabetes. So we were kind of like putting it together, testing it. It was super effective actually. I'm kind of like wondering where it's at now, but it was awesome. But my professor like saw how good I was like with research, and she knew that I had a ton of potential. She suggested I go to grad school. So I ended up because of my like major changes, I ended up graduating a semester later than what I should have. So I graduated in December of 2017. So between December and the fall of 2018, I had to like have some sort of employment to kind of hold me over until like one, I found out which grad school I'd go to, and then obviously go there. So I became a personal trainer because there's nothing that you can really do with like a bachelor's in nutrition without continuing education, especially something that was like more than just like quality assurance. So I became a personal trainer, and that's where I like learned how to train people. I worked with 100 different clients in that 8-month time period, from the ages of 7 to 72, with all sorts of different like experiences and backgrounds and goals and things like that. So that's when I became a personal trainer, went off to grad school, did super well in grad school. But the big thing that kind of stopped me was I got super depressed because I went from the state of Ohio to the state of Washington. That's about like 2,000 plus miles away. And it was just like a hard transition. And just like the whole experience just wasn't good. Things weren't actually planned out as they could have been. I wasn't fully informed of like the program and everything. So depression like brought me back to Ohio, and I really was just like at my rock bottom. And I said, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. All I know is nutrition, and I know personal training, and I'm not sure that I want to work in another gym because the experience I had in my first gym as a personal trainer was not good. So I said, if I do this, I want to work for myself. I saw someone who was a business coach, and he helped trainers like start their business. And so I said, well, I guess that's what I'm doing. So that's what I did. I started in Columbus, Ohio, and started working with like the women locally to help them like work on their health and fitness goals from there. So that's how that happened.
So I got a little bit of a smile as you said, I went to Washington because that's where I live right now. I'm looking at the Space Needle right now. And so when you're like, I went to Washington, it was so depressing. I was like, oh, don't even tell me. I've been staring at the rain and the clouds and the darkness all winter.
Yeah.
And
Actually,
I do a better job with like the seasonal depression. And actually, I've lived here my whole life, so I'm kind of used to it. But as soon as you said that, I was like, oh man, she
yeah.
knows. She
No,
knows.
it was actually, so I didn't live in Seattle. I lived in Central Washington, where Central Washington University is, right above Yakima. So it's called Ellensburg.
Mm-hmm.
So if you imagine that's super rural, but because it's super rural, you have to like travel an hour just to get anywhere else due to like the mountains and everything. So it was really hard for me to make friends socially because they all knew each other and they came to the school as like a clique, and like it's hard as an adult sometimes to like make new friends. So that's kind of like what it was, along with some other things. But yeah,
Yeah.
but
So
Seattle was beautiful.
I went to college at Washington State, so I had to drive through Ellensburg and do that little pit stop every single time we went over to Pullman. So I know that area, I know that drive, and
Yeah.
I can totally understand where you're coming from. But
Yep.
come to Seattle in July, and it's a little bit less depressing. It's definitely a
Yeah.
little bit more fun to do. But so you start working with women, and really like from a training nutrition side. And what were some of the things I've seen some of the stuff that you post about, and a lot of it is around like eating more, right? The concepts of reverse dieting, metabolic adaptation, and really getting people to understand that it's not just this like plummet your calories cardio method and approach that a lot of people subscribe to. So at what point did you kind of discover that, and maybe in your own journey be like, wait, like I feel so much better when I fuel my body as opposed to restrict it, or whatever methods you're using?
Yeah, great question. So I actually really started to notice this happen. It wasn't even when I was in college. I went through my own fitness journey, just to kind of like put that out there. I went through my own fitness journey, like gaining and losing weight over and over again. I started in high school, like 1,200 calories, because that's what like my mom did. And then gained all that weight back as soon as I went to college. Kind of went up and down a weight a couple times, did another big fitness journey, lost more weight, was like starving, hungry, couldn't like sustain it. Gained the weight back again, and then eventually I kind of like found my set point, due to like the further I went in school with nutrition, the more I learned and the more successful I was, right? So more education. So by the time that like I was able to like maintain my weight, I started working as a personal trainer, and I saw these other women coming in, and there was a woman who, she had a really hard time losing weight. And like, I don't know if I can really talk about this too much, but basically my boss was like, we need to keep her here, like, continue to pay us. But like, we don't know how to help her. And I'm like thinking, well, her calories are already really restricted. And if they're so restricted and she's not losing weight, that means her metabolism isn't working properly. Like that was kind of like my thought. And then come to find out, I was like, yeah, metabolism can definitely be adaptive. And that's kind of like what I learned too, like in school, in like my macronutrients class, with diabetes, like in my research, like stuff as well too. Like I just was like, okay, this doesn't make sense why this woman isn't losing weight. So we need to help her like lose weight. And so that's when I really started to see it. And every time that somebody was having trouble losing weight, it was just like, okay, let's give them more cardio. Let's like pull down their calories, give them more cardio, put down their calories, this and that. Let's restrict more foods from them. And I didn't really like that methodology that the people that I was working for were using. I just found it like, this is not sustainable. And I didn't want them to be in the position that I was in. So that's when I like first kind of like came to the idea of, okay, like metabolism is adaptive. We need to make sure that we change that in the positive direction, not in the negative direction. Then when I started personal training on my own, with clients, I had a ton of clients who were coming in doing the same thing. And this was like the first time, literally like the first time I had to like educate myself like fully on this topic and learn how to do it properly and be able to actually help somebody get out of this position. So it was honestly kind of like trial and error. And it was also like, I've got to have so much conviction about it that I can convince my clients that like, hey, we need to bring your calories up, right? It's brand new for me. It's going to be brand new for them, but I have to be so convicted about it to like get them to go through it with me, if that makes sense. So two things that I learned. Who is the person? I can see his face, but not his name. Layne Norton.
Yeah. Yep.
Layne Norton.
Biolane.
Yes, yeah, I wanted to say it starts with a B, but Lane Norton. So when I was in Columbus, Ohio, I actually met him twice due to like the Arnold Classic because he would come there, and I actually was like a server, and he would come into the restaurant that I worked at. And then also one of my good friends, was also his client that he took. Her name is Anne, I believe. I forget her last name. Her name is Anne, and she lived in Columbus, Ohio too. And she was like the case study that like proved that reverse dieting could help somebody achieve their goals. And so I went through all of Lane's stuff, read his book about reverse dieting, how to do it properly, use my clients, not to say that they were guinea pigs, but using them as like, hey, let's like do this together and like help you raise your metabolism so you can start losing weight. And it was super effective. And because of that, like that's how I became so successful, and also how I started like being able to help women understand that their bodies were made to work in their favor. We just had to train their metabolism to work in their favor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of how I got started with that idea and that concept, and like being able to actually use it and apply it to my clients.
Yeah, that reverse dieting book is great, and definitely I remember different parts in it where he's like, there's no studies on this, but like I'm doing this and it's working with people. And like I remember him referencing like a YouTube video in the book where he's like, people were like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm going through exactly. And you mentioned a really specific number, and I want to come back to it, 1,200 calories. I hear like that. It's not 13. It's not 11. Maybe I'm just hearing it different. But like, where does the 1,200 specifically come from? Like, where would you say? Because there's so much on social media. You said you got it from your mom. Everyone kind of finds like that number. And where do you feel like that comes from or permeates from still consistently the most?
Yeah, I really think it's moms. I honestly do. I think I'm not for sure when it started, but I think probably back in the 80s. Because if you take a look at the way that food has progressed over time, like in like the 20s, 30s, like industrialization happened, or maybe like earlier in the 1900s, like industrialization used to happen. And then after like World War II, we started to become like more like packaged foods and more things that were like for entertainment, not just for like nutrition and fuel. And then because of that, people started to gain a little bit more weight. And then like we had this huge like exercise craze, I think starting out like, or more leisure type activities started coming out like the 60s, 70s. And then at that point, like there's exercise activity. And then we start to get into more like people are still like kind of like more overweight at that point too, like the 80s. And so I think that's when like these big dieting things started coming out. And I think that 1,200 calories kind of like started in that time era. Not totally for sure. That's what I'm thinking. But
Yeah.
my mom was born like in like I'm not going to give her age, but like that 60, 70 range. I'm just trying to be respectful of my mom. But by the time you get into your 20s, you're in that 80s point. That's when you usually first start dieting. And then they start doing that, and then they try again. They have kids are watching, and it just kind of perpetuates from there. And for some reason, 1,200 calories was the thing that like stuck. And now it's just like passed down, which is like the hard part. And like I said, when I started my health and fitness journey, it's because I didn't want to pass down what I've seen from my family. So like breaking that cycle is super important. But I think that's where the 1,200 calories come from. It's just like from their mom that's like
Yeah.
just doing it.
That's super interesting. That's never anything that I've ever heard. And it was something I was curious about because I've heard it from people of different ages, right? And then when you mentioned your mom, shout out to Jen's mom. We love you. We won't
Yes.
call it any ages, but it's one of those things where it's like, I feel, and again, I'm in the space and you're in the space where my social media feed is so much about like what to do for a healthy metabolism to be strong and make these changes. And so I'm just like, where are people getting it? That makes sense that it's coming from friends or family because people talk. And I think we underestimate how much getting advice from like your mom or your coworker is maybe more like valuable, or you buy into that simply because they're of the proximity as opposed to what you're seeing on social media or not seeing on social media.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you made a really good point there. Like yours is all about like having a healthy metabolism because you're educated and you know exactly what to look for, and you know people who you can trust and build knowledge from, right? But most people don't have that. Like you said, they have their friends and their family, and they've seen what's like been done and what's out there, and that, like they don't know who to trust. So they're following a lot of different things, and now they're confused. But yeah, I totally agree that there's a difference probably in what they see versus what we see. And sometimes as a coach, I'll be totally honest, I forget what people don't know because I'm so knowledgeable and I'm so educated. Sometimes I'm drawing a blank about like, do people know this? Do they not? You know what I mean? So it's sometimes hard for me to come up with new content too because I'm like, oh, this is so obvious, but it's not obvious to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. It ends up being the content where you're like, wait, that went viral? Why did that go viral? Right. And like, it's because it's so simple, but it reminds me of when I go to get my car in and the guy's saying like, oh, your radiator this, your oil that, your tire this. And I'm just like, yeah, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And then he says, does that make sense? And I go, uh-huh. I have no idea if he installed, a spoiler on the back of my car or like completely took out the engine. I'm just like, yep, sure, that sounds good. Because you just don't know.
Yeah.
And to that point, people needing, better sources of information and getting them to buy into this concept of like, hey, we're going to increase your calories. You're going to work out less, do less cardio and less hit. What are some of the methods that you found for even someone listening to this podcast where they're like, well, okay, this sounds like crazy. Like this is too good to be true. What are some of the ways you get people to accept? It's not maybe not the right word, but like believe is maybe a better way of saying that. Believe that that's going to work for them.
Yeah, honestly, it's all about like how much social proof I can give to them. Like really, like even myself, like whenever I was eating so like or so little calories, like just showing where I was, and like I went through the process myself too to show my clients like it's totally possible. So I did it myself, and then with my clients that are on the team, I always like to give them reminders because sometimes people come in, they're scared, they're new, they've never done it before, and they like giving them reminders, even things that they don't know. Like I'll send a picture into our group chat. I'm like, hey guys, guess this woman's weight on the left and on the right. Guess how many calories she's eating on the left and the right, or things like that. I'm trying to get them to kind of like critically think it through themselves, because as long as I feel like as long as somebody can come to the decision or the conclusion or the solution themselves, like they're more likely to follow through with it because they're the one creating that belief for themselves. I can't create that belief for them. They have to themselves. So yeah, so that's pretty much what I do is like just constantly like, hey, if I can, again, going back to that conviction, if I have enough conviction in my product and my service and everything, and I can kind of give that to you, then, and you switch that belief, then you're going to be golden. Sometimes people can't really get along with it or get on board with it until they try it and see it happen. But that's like the biggest thing is overcoming that fear and just kind of like doing it anyway too. So those two things, to try to get them to come to the belief themselves, or just like allowing them to like say like follow the process and the progress will follow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So process before progress is what I always tell my clients too.
Yeah, and I've seen some of your posts where you'll reference like I'm having 25, 2,600 calories, and for a lot of people that's hard to get to because
Yeah.
they've probably been having like to your point 1,200 calories for so long. That's now 1,400 calories more, which is over double what they've consumed consistently.
Yeah. Yeah, we do that. We do that a lot. And I really just want it to also come off as like empowering to the women too, to know again that their body is going to work for them and that food is fuel. And I don't want them to have that negative mindset around it. So the more that I can show it, the better that I believe that they'll take it as well too. But every now and then I still get my messages of like, hey, I can never eat that many calories. I would gain so much weight. It's just, again, a reminder, you just got to train your metabolism like you train your muscles, right?
Hmm.
It'll work for you. Something that I like to say is that if you can slow down your metabolism, because many women come to me like, my metabolism is so slow. Well, it's not always been slow, right? It was fast as a kid, fast as a teenager, probably. So if you can slow down your metabolism, guess what? You can speed it back up,
Hmm.
right? Go in
Yeah.
both directions. So
I,
trying to help them understand that.
I think in the last couple of years too, I'll sometimes use the phrase like your metabolism might have slowed down, but you did as well, or some variation of that. And if we go and look at like what someone's doing at 22, we'll just take like 18 or 22, like in school, like you're walking to class, you're carrying all these books, and then you're going to like extracurricular activities, and then maybe you're playing a sport, or maybe you're going to the gym, and then you're staying up all night with your friends, either like partying or just hanging out, but it's just like you're just so active in that. And then fast forward 10, 15 years later, you wake up, you have like your coffee, you go sit down and then you watch TV and then you sit down and then like maybe you go work out for 30 minutes and it's like your total daily energy expenditure is just nowhere near where it was when you want the metabolism you had when you were 18.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that too. And then also in the reverse direction where people are just doing way too much at that point as well too. Yeah, exactly what you said though, like lifestyle factors. People go off to college, they start drinking more, they're staying up all night, they're eating junk food, like things like that. And like that definitely plays a role. They get married, they have a family, like, they get their full-time job, like they're stressed out, all kinds of things play a role that like affect the metabolism. And I don't think that people truly understand that when it comes to metabolism, the way that I like to think of it is that it's all hormones, right? And if your hormones are not in sync with each other, then they're not going to work properly. Your leptin, your ghrelin, your insulin, your anything else, right? Like in terms of hormones, if they're not all working together properly, like you're not going to see results. And everybody at the end of the day too, I hope you don't mind, like I'm like going off now, but
Yeah, no, go off.
at the end of the day, like some people say it's like calories in, calories out. Like as long as you eat less calories, you're going to be able to lose weight. But that's not necessarily true because your calories depend on like your hormones. And so what I like to say is, people say like calories are king. Yeah, sure. Calories are king, but your physiology, how your body operates and functions, your physiology will hold the trump card. So even if you do restrict those calories even more so, your physiology may come in and be like, yo, sorry, we're not doing this right now. It like holds the trump card. It may not be the ace or the king, right? But it can be like the jack, and it can be like, yo, sorry, trump card, here I am. Like I'm actually controlling this and the calories are not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's
I love
something that we do as well too.
I love that visual because there's so many different card games where you're like, you've got the highest card and then it's like the random spade or the random two, and you're like, ha, just kidding. Gotcha. And
Yeah.
to your point, that calories out number is this like
Yeah.
always moving, not accurate when you're looking necessarily at like your fitness watch or whatever. Like so many things are pulling in averages of millions of people, not considering your lifestyle, your factors, your history. And it's just like, oh, you burnt 2,500 calories today. But that could be like accurate, that could be way up, that could be way down. And so I think that's the thing with for me when I'm talking about is like the calories in, calories out. Like the calories out number is this moving number. And even
Yep.
calories in, if you look at like the FDA, I'm pretty sure, or I've heard it's like 25% of like leniency in terms of what they can put on a food label or food box, right?
20.
And so it's like 20%. And so you're like literally trying to pin down these numbers of calories in, calories out that are as hard to pin down as like a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
I don't have a 2-year-old, but I imagine they're hard to pin down.
Probably say like a 3 or 4 year old man. At that point, they're running.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. At that point, they're running. So for someone listening to this and they're like, man, this is like either brand new concept or I've tried, what are some of the low hanging fruits, like first things you want to get into alignment, we'll say, that they could start doing like this weekend so that their metabolism and their overall health and physiology is more in line with what they would want?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think there's like some big key things. Number one, focus on your protein content, because if you are somebody who is restricting your calories down to 1,200 or 1,400 calories per day, honestly, women do not want to eat protein. Like you'll probably hear like guys like they want to have like a steak or they want to have a burger, like they're into like their protein sources, but women don't always like, what I hear is they don't always feel their best or they don't crave to eat protein, right? So number one, focus on your protein content, because if you're eating like 1,200 calories per day and you're like restricting, are you going to choose a bagel or are you going to choose a chicken breast? You're probably going to choose a bagel because it's more delicious to eat, right? So focus on upping your protein content. And then two, along with that, start getting your sleep. Like we said, everybody's kind of stressed out. We all work a lot, we sit a lot, things like that. But focus, and sometimes at the end of the day, oh, I forget what it's called, but it's like daytime revenge, I think is what it's called, where people spend all their day working for somebody else and doing other things for everybody else. That at the end of the day, like to kind of get revenge on that, they'll just spend their time like watching Netflix or doing something like that. Have you heard that before?
It's something. It's not daytime revenge, but it's like it's along the lens of like a post work revenge or like nighttime revenge, where they're like, I don't want to get done with work, go work out, and then not have any time left for myself. So I
Yeah.
feel like I need to go and create this 6 hour window where I'm like, F the man, F work. I'm gonna just like burn through every single episode of insert Netflix show and like get mine in a way.
Yeah. And then that can lead to like a bad habit of like, putting things off, and then your bedtime goes off as well too. So bedtime, somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of bedtime. Drink more water. I would say start resistance training. Okay. Start resistance training. do a little less cardio. If you're doing a lot, I guess I should say that, but activity level, bring that activity level up. A big thing that I tell my clients is, and I don't know if you agree, but for me specifically, I tell my clients, like, don't be a couch potato athlete. You mentioned earlier that, people wake up, they have their coffee, they sit down, they, do work, they're just like sitting all day. Don't be a couch potato athlete by doing a 60-minute workout and like calling that your day. Like, be active. So for my clients, I always tell them, hit your 8,000 steps per day. And then if you've got that, if you know you're going to achieve that for the day, then do your workout. I don't want you like doing a workout and then sitting all day. So 8,000 steps and then do your workout. Try to work out somewhere between 3 to 5 days a week. What else is there? Drink your water, 100 ounces of water, 100 to like a gallon. And then mostly whole foods. Like, if you can get some whole foods into your body, I don't think people realize this, but those vitamins in your foods, and like those vitamins and minerals, they all play a role in that metabolism. Again, like at the cellular level, like vitamins like run that metabolic process. So like, focus on whole foods and get your nutrients in. And I'm saying whole foods and not just supplement, because there's a difference in how well they work. So whole foods are going to be typically more bioavailable to the body as well too. And they also have other phytonutrients in the foods as well that are helpful for your metabolism. So I think I pretty much covered like all the big things there. One more thing is, I love this, but eat meals. Like, not necessarily snacks, but eat meals. Reason for that is if you can sit down and eat meals, going back to that protein, you're probably going to get a higher protein content in a meal than you are if you were to like snack or have like small meals throughout the day. So eat like 3 meals a day, maybe one snack or something like that. That's something that I really encourage my clients to do. But those
Yeah.
are the big tips.
Yeah, no, I love the Whole Foods one. The couple things that you spoke to. One, 3 to 5 days working out, right? Whether that's resistance training or doing whatever exercise you're doing. But in order to do that, that means you have to have 4 to 2 days off,
Mm-hmm.
and like taking a day off and be like, hey, you're not going to work out, and that's actually the best thing for you. And that's like a big thing that I feel like a lot of people miss, because there is so much of like a go 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 mentality for people, that the idea of slowing down is this like sacrilegious concept. You're like, wait, you mean I'm not going to be plugged in on my phone or on my email for 16 hours and I'm going to take a day off and then I'm going to like rest? I can't rest. Like, I'll rest when I'm dead. And it's like, well, you're heading there. Um, Not quite. But the other one that you mentioned too, the whole foods, because a lot of people be like, oh, I want more protein. I'll just have protein bars, right? But you're missing what is going to come in the form of iron or in the form of zinc that you might be getting from an actual like meat-based product or an actual nut or seed or something like that. Whereas like that protein bar is like, yeah, it's got protein, but the thing's just thrown together in a factory for protein.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't mind if they use that every now and then, but it cannot be their main staple. Like, that's why we said 80% whole foods. But yeah, totally agree. Just like all those processed foods, like, again, going back to what we said at the beginning of this call, like, you don't necessarily need those like health foods that are marketed to you in the stores, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say, diving into the resistance training piece? Because I was a personal trainer about a year back and did that for several years. But one of everyone's least favorite exercises, I don't know why, was like some variation of the Bulgarian split squat. Do you have one that like either you hate or your clients are like, no, like anything but this one?
Oh my gosh. I've had somebody tell me specifically, like literally on a sales call, like on I call it a clarity call, because at the end they should have clarity about what direction they need to go in. But she was very, very adamant about, I do not want to do lunges. I said, okay, we will not put lunges into your program. Made sure that whenever we set her up with her coach, I was like, no lunges. So lunges, for me particularly, it is for those Bulgarian split squats. I do not like those. And then the last one for me, myself particularly too, are hip thrusts. Man,
Mm,
when you get those heavy hip thrusts and you have to load the bar with all that weight, it's a workout to put it on, and it's a workout to take it off.
yeah.
So yeah, but I would say those Bulgarian split squats, nobody likes those, or burpees as well. Yeah.
Yeah, burpees are definitely no fun. The hip thrust specifically, because it's one of the exercises you can load the most weight on. So you end up spending like 5 minutes putting weight on each side of the bar. And then I had a client, he called them Satan spanks or Satan slaps, where it's like basically like it burns so much on the back side as you're doing them. And so it's like, here you are, you've got, hundreds of pounds on the bar. And every time I finish doing like a heavy version or some sort of ISO hold or whatnot, I like I want to get it off me so bad, and then I end up just like pounding the ground because it's like I can't get away because I got this weight on my leg and I'm just doing anything I can to get out of it. But it's also really good for the body and the core, and it's like one of the best exercises you can do. So you got to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, my thing is like it'll burn while doing it, but after you do it, and then I guess like all the blood is just like flowing there, like a pump to like the booty, and it's
Yeah,
like cramping, and you're like, oh gosh, like I gotta sit up a little bit, gotta take the pressure.
exactly. It's the pressure. That's why I like roll over on the side. I'm like anything to like depressurize this chamber.
Yes, that's the other big thing about it too. It's just not fun after a while sometimes, but you do what you gotta
Yeah,
do.
you do what you got to do. Uh,
Yeah.
if you had to say, getting into a little bit more like personality and fun things, like after like a really good hard workout, like what are some of your favorite like treats or like foods that you're like, I love this. Like if you get a chance to have like this meal, you're like, oh my gosh, I love that. Like it's your go-to.
Oh my gosh, everybody knows I love ice cream. I just love ice cream. I cannot.
Where from?
Ice cream
Like,
is
is
my.
there a specific brand or pint or anything like that?
Oh my gosh, if I could pick like a place, like a specific place, it would be Jenny's. It's called Jenny's, and it's based out of Columbus, Ohio. And now it's like nationwide. Do they have one in Seattle?
No Jenny's. We got
And
Salt and Straws are the big ones out here. I don't know if you
uh,
ever ran any of those.
man, I cannot remember if I have, but Jenny's ice cream. If I could just have like some Jenny's ice cream, it's a good day.
Hmm.
That's really it. Or any ice cream in particular. Go to the store. Ben and Jerry's non-dairy Netflix and chilled. Like that's a good go-to as well. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to like show for everyone listening, like, yeah, we work out, we eat healthy, but we also live. Like, if I can go and get like a Chipotle burrito, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. It's exactly what I wanted.
My big thing lately has been like a donut. Like if I can have a donut, that
Maple
would be
maple
great.
bar, jelly filled, cream filled.
Oh, I only like cake donuts. I do not like those fluffy pastry donuts. I guess they're called cake donuts. They're nice, they're thick, like that's a good donut.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like powdered sugar. Oh, I just have memories of like my mom would take me to school every now and then as a kid, like after I don't know if I should say this, after a dentist appointment, or maybe before a dentist appointment, but a powdered sugar donut, it would just get all over me. Like I was a very plain child. So just powdered sugar, no chocolate, nothing. We were good. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really do soda at all anymore, but my dad growing up worked for Pepsi. And after basketball games, he would always have either Hostess powdered donuts, Ding Dongs, and Mountain Dew. And like parents hated him, but we were all so excited because we're like, oh, sweet. Like basketball, and we get Ding Dongs and like Capri Suns and Mountain Dew. Like, yeah,
You
definitely.
just bring those in for the team.
Yeah, exactly. Like most parents are bringing in orange slices and everything else. And I think the next question I had was if you had like one song or even like one artist where you're like, this is like my jam when you are doing those hip thrusts or split squats, like what are you listening to?
Let's see. What is that? Okay, so I can't think of one immediately off the top of my head. Like I am really bad about like song names and like artists and lyrics and like all that. It's hard for me to remember, but I can tell you a PR song if I ever went to like PR. It's The Voice of Truth by Casting Crowns. That's like my
Okay.
go-to.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like we were talking about before, we just have to like be able to believe in ourselves, and sometimes we have like false truths that we can't like do something. So like The Voice of Truth is like, okay, I can do this. It's like my go-to like pump up song. It's
Yeah.
like
Is that the one where it's like in the voice of truth says this is my story or something like that?
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I've
yeah,
heard that
yep,
song.
that's it.
That is definitely
Yeah.
a pump up song.
Yeah, for sure. And then, oh my gosh, I have so many songs I've like just put on repeat in this past year. Like, honestly, there's like songs that I've over the past like couple months, I just put it on and it's like playing for 24 hours as well too. So, Sitting in the Back Seat is another one. I forget who that's by. Oh, what is this? There's this new song out by some girl. I forget, but yeah, there's a couple of songs I'll put on, but The Voice of Truth is like my PR song, and that's what I'll go to if I ever want to like have like a good day or like, set a good record for myself. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, having a good song or like an instant like energy motivation change is a total game changer, especially from like a fitness standpoint. Uh, Another question with that, is there any like piece of like advice, not advice, equipment or like little like thing that like you like can't live without, or you're like, this is like a total game changer that people should know
Yes.
about?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's funny you said that because right before this, I just recorded a video called like my gym bag essentials. which I'm going to like put out there probably like next week or something. Because I'm trying to get into like YouTube more and just at least like be consistent, like putting out videos, right? But I have my bag beside me here. Let's pull out the ones that I found to be the most helpful. Number one is, okay, these pull-up straps. So I've been working really hard on my pull-ups, and these have helped so much because typically my hands get super sweaty. I can't grip the bar anymore. It can also like, be hard on my hands and give me like calluses, and like that's gonna rip eventually. So I went from being able to do like 5 pull-ups to like 10 pull-ups because of these straps. And they're like less than $15 on Amazon, I believe. And you just like put them over your wrist, put your middle and your ring finger in it, and then you're good to go. So pull-up straps. And then the other big one that I got that I'm really excited about in terms of equipment, I think people have called them. Sorry, I'm like pulling things out on video now.
No, it's like Fitness Mary Poppins. I love this.
Yeah. Another big one is like, I think they're called donuts whenever you have like just like the teeny tiny like plates. But this is like 1.25 pounds. So instead of having to increase your weight in increments of 5 pounds, you can increase your weight in increments of 2.5 pounds. And that can help with like the progressive overload. And then the last big piece of equipment that I've had for like maybe over a year now, which has helped a ton too, is kind of like those pull-up straps or pull-up grips. We also have wrist straps. And these are like my absolute favorite because I think most wrist straps are like, just like the canvas cloth and it like wraps around through the loop. The one that I have, it wraps around your wrist with Velcro, and then it's like just a straight piece of cloth from there. And I feel like that's so much better than like the angled cloth. So wrist straps, so I could like improve like, we were talking about lunges, right? Dumbbell lunges, holding that weight. Oh my gosh, it gets so heavy. You just like want to drop the dumbbells, but this helps so much. And then like rows, like dumbbell rows, like I've increased my rows to like 70 pounds from like 30 to 35 pounds before, just because I'm not like wearing out my grip. So I know you said like one piece of equipment. Those are my 3 pieces of equipment. Yeah.
Those are great. Yeah, you get around those rate limiters of grip and pain or whatever, like real quick with those. So I love those. And then I see the little hip thrust pad because you got to always have that extra pad.
Yes. That's the other thing too. Okay, I'm going to share my video with you now. This whole point.
It's a sneak preview.
Yeah. So most of them like have like the squat pad that's like circular. You stick it on the bar. But what I've noticed is sometimes like that'll slip. And then you've just got that bar laying on you. It's like hurting your pelvis, right? So this is a balance pad, like a memory foam balance pad, and it's so much better just because it's not going to slip because it's like a big pad, right? So it's so good, and it lasts a pretty long time. I noticed that the hip thrust pads will create cracks in it and it'll wear out pretty fast because they're not as thick, but this one's pretty thick. So that too. But I think like the big thing about like what I keep in my bag is like the fact that not all women keep it in their bags. They don't realize the importance of like lifting heavy and like the equipment that can be so helpful to help you lift heavy, if that makes sense. So you don't always see women with like wrist straps or like with pull-up grips or like even with like these little 1.25 pound like plates, but those are the things that you can use to like build that lean muscle and like build that strength that's really going to give you the physique that you want. So I wanted to share that because like most people will share like, oh, like booty bands or like these other things, but no, like let's get into the real stuff that's going to change you, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, that's badass. Another one I was thinking about was like strength bands and like stuff for like assisted pull-ups or like because those like everyone's got like to your point the booty bands or the tubes. Yeah, you got it pulling it out right now. Mary Poppins comes strikes again.
Yeah.
Cool. I think one last question that I love to ask is just like you get a chance to sit down with anyone, fictional, not alive, and you get to just have a dinner. Who would that be?
Oh, you're gonna make me think on this one. Oh, I'm afraid there's gonna be too much silence here. Probably, okay. So there's a book that I really like, and I'm just gonna pull this from that book, and it's really inspired me a lot. The book is called The War of Art. Have you read it? Okay. I would probably want to like talk to the author of that. I think his name is Steven Pressfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, so probably him, just because that book like really changed my life, and it was just like all about getting out of your head and just taking action. If anybody knows me, like if they follow me on Instagram, I always talk about how much I love action takers. I love when my clients take action, things like that. And he really took like the ideas of like, procrastination, perfectionism, like self-sabotage, not taking action. He really made it a very easy way to like digest, and like broke it down into several different examples. And it's just, I love learning from other people, and I feel like he provided the most value, I guess, to learn from, in terms of like helping me continue to push and grow and not stop myself as I was starting my business. So probably talk to him, because he seems like he's super like personable, and he can like, if you can take something complex and make it simple, then you understand it. And just like, I want to pick his brain more about like different things, I guess. So just like an easy answer, probably him, since like that book has impacted me so much. It's the first thing I think about sometimes in
Yeah.
different scenarios. So, yeah.
That's a really good answer. I've done book clubs in the past, and Turning Pro, which is also by him, is a book that I really like to use because it kind of helps people understand this concept of the hero's journey and just like getting out of your own way and
Yeah.
ascending to the person that you want to be. So I think that's a great choice. And yeah, definitely. If you could throw like books in your Mary Poppins bag, that would be like, maybe another good one to throw in. You can do a whole
That,
nother video on books that you need to read today, and you can
yeah.
do that one. Cool,
Um,
Jen. Thank you so much for the time and just like your insight and the energy. It's been really fun. Anyone who gets to watch this on YouTube will pick that up right away. And so just want to thank you for the time, the laughs, and any last thoughts, or where can people find you? Anything that you're doing right now in terms of an initiative standpoint, I would love to just help support that.
Yeah, you can find me. I would say I post most of my content on Instagram. So it's Jenn Wall Fitness. That's Jenn Wall, Wall Fitness. And that's where you'll find me on Instagram. Just give me a follow. I try to like post humorous stuff, as well as like, educational stuff, on there. And then if you want to, like I said, trying to grow the YouTube, try to just be consistent and like letting people get to know me, because I feel like sometimes, I'm just gonna put this out there, I feel like sometimes with so many trainers and like influencers on Instagram, people who've like, women have been like preyed upon before. Like, I just want people to know like, hey, I truly care, and if I can give you a ton of education and value, then like that's what I care to do. So if you want to go to my YouTube, I'm definitely trying to like put out that education for you so that I can help you. But that's also Jenn Wall Fitness as well too, so you can find me there. But I think that's pretty much it. It was super enjoyable being able to chat with you today. And thank you for all the fun questions. And thank you for allowing me to pull out my Mary Poppins bag, my gym bag, with
Yeah.
all the things in it too. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the YouTube's fun, and it's something I'm working on as well, just because it's longer lasting too. You can have like the best post that helps so many people, and then it just gets buried with, funny, but a bunch of different reels. So I like that. We'll definitely link to that. And one last time, thank you so much for the time, the insight, and look forward to people being able to listen to this one.
Thank you.